Is Dr. Mike going off the rails?
I would just talk to ChatGPT probably all day long.
It put me in an Uber. I bled into his car.
I'm bigger and stronger than Mike Mentzer.
I actually have zero shame whatsoever.
Has the funny bald guy from Renaissance Periodization and one of the smartest minds in the YouTube fitness scene finally lost the plot completely? It all started with his recent skin removal surgery, thoughts about doing more liposuction, glorifying AI, and a supposed next generation of steroids. His beef with Puri Puri Prisoner has been reignited, and I've been getting a ton of comments asking me to go over this in its entirety, so I will. Now, this isn't a hate video on Dr. Mike. In fact, I love the Renaissance Periodization channel, and I respect the bald gentleman more than I'd like to admit, but I wanted to dive into his mind, so here we go. Back in March, Dr. Mike performed a skin removal surgery with the primary goal of losing his chronic love handles and stubborn fat cells from that area, mostly for the aesthetics of it, because Mike is already so beautiful that his only downside was loose skin hanging from his lower back. In reality though, it was because Mike has said that he couldn't seem to get shredded down there, which has cost him success in bodybuilding and potentially costing him his pro card.
It'll stretch out to there, whereas my hip bones are like 1/2 of the way in. That is a ton of extra fat cells put on, a ton of extra skin gained.
Now, hear me out. Mike is super open about his perception of his own body, and I respect the hell out of him for it. He doesn't sugarcoat, he doesn't censor anything, and he tells you exactly how and what it is, for good and for bad. I am personally against any type of surgery done exclusively for aesthetics, and I think it shows an unhealthy body image, but it's not my place to tell others what to do with their own body. Now, he did explain his reason for the skin removal surgery as being due to bad choices Mike has made in the past, like bulking up too much or being misguided on the pursuit of muscle gain.
The mistake was to not know physiology. I had had so much cellular multiplication that, especially just because of my genetics, a huge fraction of my body fat was stored in my love handles and in my lower back,
which caused him to end up having more fat cells and more loose skin in that area of his lower back and hips. And regardless of how lean he got, he could not get rid of it. Alongside the claim that he stored a lot of water down there, which has gotten a lot of heat from the bodybuilding community because it was probably that he just didn't get lean enough for competition. Regardless, he got the surgery and it took a long time to recover from it. He even made a whole video going over his recovery process, and it didn't look pleasant, to say the least. Now, is it an issue that one of the biggest educational channels in the fitness scene does this? I would argue yes. Does he necessarily promote this type of surgery? No, if anything, I think it got people to actually back off because of how grotesque and painful it looks. Several people did make videos about it though, but it does seem quite two-sided, because many of those same guys did nearly bully the guy into getting said surgery to fix the issue, and then when he got it, they called him out for saying that it's body dysmorphia or ill advice. Still, I don't think getting skin removal surgery for bodybuilding is a smart move, but again, if you want to be competitive in that sport, you kind of have to do things which affect your physical and mental health negatively. So I don't see how this is much different from going on a fat cycle just to get ready for a show, even if this is a bit more silly and much more invasive. But okay, let's just move away from that and see a more recent controversy, being that he made a video about the next generation of steroids, supposedly without any side effects. And this one I am highly skeptical about. Dr. Mike mentioned a study recently done on monkeys where they gave them 2 drugs which inhibit the hormones myostatin and activin A, which both work on reducing the amount of muscle you can build negatively. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all the statistics. They basically divided the monkeys into 4 groups, and the group that was given both of these drugs, called trevogrumab and garetosmab, alongside the very famous semaglutide, which you can find in Ozempic, not only lost the most fat out of all the 4 groups, but they also built a tremendous amount of muscle, whereas all the other groups actually lost muscle. And mind you, monkeys don't lift weights, but if we do, it's usually under sanctioned rules in powerlifting. So they built a ton of muscle just by existing while taking these drugs. Now, Mike said that these drugs will likely come without any side effects, and that human trials are currently ongoing to assess the effectiveness of these drugs. And I think that's great, because these drugs could be given out to the elderly who lack any physical function, cancer patients, or perhaps other hospitalized patients who are losing muscle rapidly for whatever reason. That is awesome, but for those of you who know a lot about biochemistry and the likes, this just sounds like a too good to be true story. As one, these drugs are monoclonal antibodies, meaning they probably have to be injected and won't come as a pill. Secondly, these drugs might also increase cardiac hypertrophy as well, which means your heart muscle grows thicker, and that might actually decrease its ability to pump blood, like we see with the disease hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Thirdly, they won't necessarily be free of side effects, especially long-term, like we see with steroids. One thing is cardiac hypertrophy, but there's also the higher risk of injuries to passive tissues like ligaments and tendons, which are also very common among steroid users. It's a bit of wishful thinking, yes, but apparently 77% of the people who partook in those human trials after taking all 3 medications experienced adverse side effects, and 1 out of 10 experienced so-called serious side effects, while 28% of all participants dropped out. Which does sound quite scary, and as things are right now, these drugs probably aren't getting passed as they are, but it's still really cool to think that we could make drugs that cause you to gain muscle without doing anything and losing fat. 2 of the biggest health problems across the globe being faced right now in any age group. Now, I gotta say, I'm generally opposed to medication of anything that can be completely fixed through lifestyle intervention alone, unless, like I said, it's absolutely necessary, and I definitely wouldn't want drugs like these out on the open market, as Dr. Mike insinuates, but again, they could be very viable for specific patient scenarios, or for old people who could live another 10 to 15 years but have the physical capacity of a rock. They definitely shouldn't be used as anabolics though, even if the side effects short-term aren't as bad. We don't know the long-term effects, even though that's why we do these human trials. I just don't think putting drugs out there that can help you grow muscle faster than anabolics is generally gonna make society better, and it's definitely not gonna fix any of the issues currently ongoing in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, though it might make them worse. Mike has also talked very openly about other drugs like MK677, and he recently had an event where he supposedly broke down crying over a conversation with ChatGPT.
I have in the past week and a half had, depending on how you count them, 2 to 4 episodes of bawling to my ChatGPT app on my phone.
Wow.
Bawling.
He made a video going over why you should take nicotine for fat loss, and he destroyed functional patterns, which is a cult built on pseudoscience, so that's actually a good thing. But the reason why I think people perceive Dr. Mike as having lost it is because, well, he's a weird guy. He's a weird guy with a big platform and a PhD. I'm a weird guy too, and if I were to walk around and saying stuff that I probably should keep to myself, then people would think I'm weird too. Mike says pretty much anything he thinks, or at least that's the way it seems. And the reason he does so, it could be to catch your attention, or because that's just the way he prefers to communicate. Yeah, Dr. Mike has some bad takes, but so does pretty much everyone. And in the fitness industry, people love to nitpick, especially if you're a supposed expert, which Mike is, though he's not always right about training, nutrition, PEDs, or even bodybuilding. He even said so himself that he sucks at bodybuilding, and his colleague Jared said that he was uncoachable.
I said, Mike, you're the worst person that I've ever coached because you hate bodybuilding. He's bad at it. He's the worst. Because he will not do any of that shit. He doesn't like it.
Which honestly is part of the reason why he couldn't get that pro card. Regardless, Mike has gained a lot of attention for these bad calls, and people love to dramatize it for views because he has such a big channel, and because he's such a weird guy, you can take endless things he said out of context to make him seem even weirder. And sometimes just knowing the context makes it worse.
You happen to walk into your bedroom, and there are 3 random waifu Japanese girls that just couldn't wait for you to return.
Mike is, after all, a smart guy though. He does have the same education as I do, even putting it one step higher with a PhD, but when it comes to his own body, he makes questionable choices. Mike himself knows it, Greg's editor definitely knows it, but again, he is just a professor who makes educational content on YouTube, who sometimes says things which are wrong or controversial, and sometimes things that are just straight up weird. And a lot of guys like to grab onto that harder than last time. Even though Mike knows he's gonna get heat for saying a lot of these things that many, myself included, don't necessarily agree on, most of what he says is good stuff. And the guy definitely knows more about physiology than most of fitness YouTube, and probably more than I do. Even though I don't think all of his practical takes on training and nutrition are always the best. Still, I do think a lot of his pursuits in bodybuilding and the PEDs have clouded his judgment in quite a few areas, specifically on how he views drugs and medications as tools to build muscle or to get shredded, or how he's willing to go through invasive surgery to potentially become a better bodybuilder even though he doesn't have the genetics for it. He does talk about religion and stuff too, but that's not my field to talk about. I say believe what you want, but don't let that impact others negatively, and it's all good. If you want to believe our Lord and Savior is a big Greek retired weightlifter with the voice of an angel, then that's fine, and possibly ideal. Mike also talks about politics, technology, human nature and such, and my philosophy is stick to what you know, and be okay to not have an opinion about everything, or at least keep them to yourself. You'll never catch me rambling about stuff I have little to no knowledge on, because that's for the experts who actually studied it. And I prefer when Mike just talks about training strategies, sport performance, nutrition, and occasionally PEDs for the educational side, just hoping he doesn't glorify them. And a lot of the times, he doesn't. He's very open about the effects certain anabolics have on his physical and mental health, and what it takes to pursue a professional bodybuilding career. But I sure as hell hope he doesn't go back there for another try at the pro card, even though that seems to be likely as things are going right now. At the end of the day, we do respect Dr. Mike for his transparency and positive contributions, but it's also encouraged to question what we hear from influencers, especially when the lines between science, education, personal obsession, and entertainment do get a bit blurry. Let me know down below what you guys think in the comments though. Are you personally a fan of Dr. Mike and the Renaissance Periodization channel? Do you think he's lost the plot completely, or are people, myself included, over-dramatizing his takes and situation? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.